Hey, Composing Gloves here, and this is another video in the Sound Design with Harmor series. Today, I'm going to show you how to make this sound, of course, and it's right here. It's only being done in Harmor as part of the Harmor, we're sound designing in Harmor so that you can get some ideas of what to do. And if this is, now I'm going to be going pretty fast because I have a whole series where I cover Harmor in great detail. So here it is. Here's the patch. No, this is not the patch. I'm tricking you. This is the patch. So as you can see, here it is. So I'm really going to focus on the idea of a wobble bass. So wobble bass to me is any sort of bass that, goes the wub 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 type deal and creates a pattern that you can recognize. And you might use it as like one 4-bar measure and then use it like a laser bass or something and another type of bass and then another wub wub wub, it's all up to you. Sometimes people use these things as really groovy type stuff like Grizz or Opio or people like that. So that's just what I've been listening to recently, so they come to my mind fast. So what is going on here? Well, I could show you this patch has got a lot of sounds in it, really easy to manipulate. If you want that drum and bass feel, like a noisy type deal, you can come over here. I've made a hole in the EQ. Without the hole, it sounds like this. And then you can turn the pitch up and the harmonizer up. So that harmonizer gives it a very metal feel. But I wanted the sharp, sort of sawtoothy type deal. So, yeah. So because of that gigantic fundamental I had, I ended up cutting out a great deal of it. And I only wanted just the low, just the first harmonic. Just because I didn't want any of that other stuff. So I chose to do that. So that's my EQ curve. I'm using a crude bandpass. However, you can use any kind of filter. For me, filters and volume are the ways you're generally going to achieve your wub wub. Occasionally, you'll be able to use like phase cancellation and other maybe some more creative ways of doing it. But for the most part, it's filters that achieve your rhythmic patterns for you. You bring your filters in and out in a rhythm. I'm using the log distortion. I made this whole thing using rubber most of the time, and then it became way too aggressive, so I went to log, and that was still too aggressive, and that's when I decided I needed to take out just stuff in the EQ, and I ended up doing that, and so rubber sounds fine too. It's got a very different feel to it, though. I like log. I feel like it's sharper. Fits into the texture better. I am compressing this. I'm using burning with not even touching the amount and brought up the mids and highs. Gives it that bite at the top end, that extra emphasis. Using reverb, I just turned it on and took down the wet a little bit, and that was the end of that. Now I am automating, I believe I already said this, I'm using the crude bandpass. I'm automating the frequency. And so it looks crazy. And that's pretty much it. Now, a few things to note. The harmonizer, of course, the Prism did some... It becomes very noisy like at that point. Harmonizer does some cool stuff I showed you, and the pitch variation on the unison did some interesting things. I originally was using this way more. Now it's like barely on. Probably doesn't... you can hear a difference because the panning is up a little bit, but that'd be the only difference. You could always just pan it on your own. Using some sort of other plugin if that's what you want. And the phaser can create some really interesting it can create what's perceived as resonances if you use it right. So that might actually add bite and grit to your sound, which is something that you are probably looking for. So let's go through. So this is the bandpass that creates the wobble here. That's like the main thing is the bandpass. So that's everything, by the way. And now let's look at some other ones. So that's bandpass. Let's look at a low pass. I'm going to bring down my width because I want my filter to be as sharp as possible. Oh yeah, and I forgot. I did bring up a subharmonic here. So that's a low pass. Here's a band pass. I'm taking it out because it's too low. My filter won't reach it. That's one thing I don't dig about some of these filters is I can't get to the lowest of low harmonics easily. So I usually end up opening a much sharper filter from somewhere else if I want to do that. So that's the crude band pass. We're familiar with that. Here's the band stop. Now we need a wider filter shape for this. That's pretty interesting. And then finally, the crude high pass. So try messing with your filter width. I, of course, settled on the band pass because I thought it sounded the best. You'll see a billion basses with massive especially that use this technique. So I'm not doing any post, so it's a little interesting because I'd open up a number of things in post and probably make it sound crazy, but I'm actually pretty happy with this sound. This sounds pretty nuts already. Now let's make some generic stuff here. So here I have a Harmor, and just for this sound design purposes, and here's what it sounds like. It sounds, oh man, don't do that. That's what it sounds like. So if we want to make a wobble, I'm using crude just because I'm using crude. I believe that I'm not sure if phase shifts distortion is different. They've got to be different. Their image line knows their filters. They make DAWs. So here is that. If you want to wobble, you just start automating your filter on and off. That is one way to do it. If we want it to be sharper, because you might be like, oh, that's not sharp enough. Well, look at that. Not very much space. It's because our filter's too wide. So that's pretty nifty. Okay, so that's like the basic 101 wobble thing. If we did that with a bandpass. So yeah, I'm going to use the low pass. I use the low pass a lot. There is one other thing you could do. You could use the volume. You could do it with an LFO on your volume. And let's get rid of this filter automation. So our maximum, minimum. So you could create a wobble using that as well. Let's make a patch with that. So here we have that. And let's distort it. Asymmetry be an interesting move. Let's turn on part B. Move the frequency up an octave. Move the sub up. That's pretty tight right there. Let's go into the EQ. We could automate that on and off. That'd be kind of cool. Making different EQ shape for. Now, when you're automating, if you want to automate both things at the same time, you could do part link. And you could do that. So once you're done messing with your plugin, however, you do stand the risk of moving things and accidentally changing things that you never intended to change. So be careful. That's funny. Oh, you know what would be interesting? If we did something like this. Well, that's a curious thing. So let's go over to part B. And we could create a sub rhythm. This is the filter B. Now we're creating a really complicated wobble bass. That's pretty dope. Now let's come over here to do our volume deal on part B. Tempo sync it up. Let's see, I want a good, interesting tempo. Now let's take a random phase because I want some more variation. And so that's pretty interesting. And we could even do something like this. It's a curious little thing. All right, so let's come over here and bring that back down. Now, in conjunction with the last video, it would be interesting to detune this. Man, that's tight. We could make a drop of that. We could even do something like. Let's do something like this. This is one of those things that gets really touchy after. You have to get it just right. Prism would sound interesting on this too. It sounds like some sort of a baby seal calling for its mother. Okay, let's see here. Well, there's a lot more we could do. We could mess with the phase for sure. Harmonic randomness. Now I'm creating resonances just because I like that. I like resonances, but we have to be careful about what I'm doing with my EQ. So I'm going to cut it there because I could just keep going and going and going. And I got sort of into the part B side of things, not so much the part A. So what I might do, I guess I'll do that now, is I'll get rid of the LFO. So LFO, move it to an envelope. I like that a lot more. Except for I'm still getting that do. which I should not be getting anymore. I should not be getting that. Oh, you know what? It's because I have to disable the LFO. There we go. And what I would do is I would link this. Link to controller, filter, B frequency, accept. Oh, this is no longer moving. Link to controller, filter B. I had removed conflicts on, which is the problem. And then I would create a secondary texture underneath it. And when you change these settings, they change on both parts. So you'd have to have a separate Harmor if you wanted to do that. I'd probably EQ this out more. That's kind of an interesting deal. That is a very interesting. So anyways, that's my sound. I could see that as like a thing. If you listen to music, guys, can see that's a thing. So if you have any questions, drop those in the comments, subscribe, and have a blessed day.
Opposing blows. Reversing.